right, good evening, guys. Welcome to episode 49 of the Racing Line podcast.
50.
I say 50 now.
Surely, I'm sure it's 50.
All right, then we'll call it 50. I've been anticipating that for so long, and then when I get it, I screw it up.
I know.
All right, episode 50 of the Racing Line podcast. Just Joey and I with you here tonight, where we've got a big night of racing to review. We've got the Formula One that took place in Holland, the Netherlands, last night, and also into this morning. We'll talk a little bit about the MotoGP and the championship that is just starting to come to a boil now, which is really good for any racing fans out there. And then we'll also discuss this morning's race, or the results of this morning's race from Portland in the States, and what it means for Will Power's chances at a second IndyCar championship. So a few things to talk about tonight, Joey. How you going, buddy?
I'm all right, mate. I'm ready to get into it.
Well, where do you think we should begin? We'll start with Formula One, but where to go from here?
I mean, Max was imperious. I don't know if you want to start with that.
Not a whole lot to say about it, to be honest with you, about his form. It's kind of just
It was what was
of
expected.
the last couple of rounds. Yeah, yep. I don't know, to be honest with you, it was a little bit of an underwhelming race. I mean, even within the telecast, they were talking about how a lot of the tracks that we've been to this year, for the most part, we've seen like an increase in spectacle and overtakes, etc., based off of just the new regulations, probably the larger DRS zones. But this was probably maybe the first time since Saudi Arabia, but definitely the first time this season where even the DRS, the OP-ness of the DRS wasn't as visible, unless
I think that was just to do with the track more than anything.
Yeah, unless you're in a car that was far superior to your rivals, which was interesting. It wasn't the most engaging race. I feel like I spent more time on my phone than engaged with the race due to its very nature. But there were a few things to take away from it. I think for the most part, we saw a good race from Mercedes, particularly George Russell, and even Hamilton before he kind of got strung out to at the end of the race with the whole pit stop issue, was looking very competitive. And I thought that if they hadn't brought Lewis in with George, there's probably a better chance for them to both fight for the podium. So that was probably one bright part of the racing. There was a bit of racing, all race surrounding Fernando Alonso. Either him overtaking or being overtaken, but really for the most part, it wasn't a great race.
No, I tend to agree. It wasn't a great race. I feel like what this race showed us was just more sort of verification of what we've been saying in the past couple of weeks about how Red Bull, especially Max, has sort of hit a run of form that he doesn't look like breaking anytime soon. And realistically, I feel like of all the people involved in the race today, I think Mercedes would be the most disappointed. And I feel like disappointed is probably a harsh word to use, but in hindsight, they'll probably look at it as a few points lost in their chase of getting second place in the championship as a team. But
because I think that they would see it as like they didn't maximize the opportunity that they potentially had. Like I wouldn't say it was disappointing.
Yeah, I don't think it's disappointing.
They didn't capitalize on the
Well,
chance
I think Toto Wolff sort of said it best when he said, if we leave George out and pit Lewis, we're screwed. If we do it the other way around, we're screwed. Realistically, probably the thing that they, in hindsight, should have done was just pit both of them, relinquish the lead, and then just hold on to second and third. But I mean, when your car is number one on the road, that's a hard thing to relinquish when you haven't had that track position all year.
It's the Lando Norris Russia mentality, right?
Yeah, very much so. I feel like it's a sort of slightly different. Yeah. Well, even in hindsight, you look at the decision and how much pace was gained with those new soft tires just off going down the main straight. I mean, Max made it look so easy on Lewis, and then even George coming past Lewis looked just as easy. So yeah, in hindsight, it was the wrong decision. But this is one of them where I can sort of understand where they were coming from and why the decision was made. And realistically as well, a second place isn't that bad for Mercedes if you think about it. So they still did make points on Ferrari this weekend, but just probably not as much as they.
What did you make of Ferrari again?
I don't want to say anything anymore, to be honest. I feel like as a team, even though this weekend's mistakes weren't as probably egregious as some of the other ones, I think if they look at themselves, they haven't executed a perfect weekend, regardless of winning the race. They haven't executed a perfect weekend just in terms of any mistakes for a long time. I don't think if they were true to themselves, they could look at any of the last 5 races and say, we know that we did the best we could and it just wasn't our day. I feel like the mistakes are compounding in a way that is becoming like a joke, but more than just a joke, but like it's taking away a lot of their credibility.
They're becoming a bit of a meme.
Yeah, well, it is a meme. Like if you watch the Formula One videos after every race, they have a section about memes of the weekend. It's just all Ferrari. And realistically, there's no one to blame but themselves. I mean, everyone's left the tire out, but come on, man. Like, I think it's just more than anything, it's just disappointing.
They're not doing anything to rectify like their image.
The stigma.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting. I think there weren't many stories at the top. I think we're kind of at the point now where the championship is over, and it sounds bad, but I'm kind of almost, from the championship point of view, just kind of waiting out the races to crown the champion.
Well, I think there's 7 races left, and Max can crash out of 4 of them, and Leclerc would have to win them all and get fastest laps just to tie up the series, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's kind of become a bit of a dead fish. One talking point that did really make me think this week. Something I was thinking about probably last week as well, but this week it really occurred to me. When we've had Latifi in Williams for his 3rd year now, 2 years with George Russell, the car was at the back, very much at the back. And Russell swept the floor with Latifi. What I was seeing this week from Albon, and probably for half the season now, is now that the Williams, even though it's a weak car, has some level of competitiveness in the hands of a driver that can overdrive. I think we're seeing an even bigger difference between a competent driver and a not competent driver. Because
I think one thing that I would say,
that's second last and he's 25 seconds ahead of Latifi, it doesn't make as much of an impact as seeing someone in a Williams pushing for a top 10 in qualifying, and then, like we saw last week in the race, fighting for a point, making the car as wide as he could, etc. So the fact that we've seen Albon make a fist of this opportunity and really get in there and kind of spread his elbows and have a go. I think from Williams' point of view this week, but we've been saying it for a long time, if the car's getting a little bit more competitive, they can probably make the money that they're going to lose from Lavazza with Latifi just by getting a few more spots up on the grid.
I don't even think it's at the stage anymore where it's if the car's getting a little bit better. Like I would disagree with you and say Albon's overdriving the car. I don't think he's ever been an overdriver. To be honest, I think he's just always been a very good driver. But like I would like to see another competent driver in that car, so we know exactly where that car is in terms of like in the mix of the other teams.
And to know where Albon is.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you look at it like this week, that car finished ahead of both Haas's. It's finished ahead of finished
Aston
ahead of Danny
Martins
Rick
this
this
year.
weekend, but it's finishing ahead of a few Aston Martins, of a few Alpha Tauri. So on merit, like consistently over the last 3 weekends, it's definitely making inroads. And I think Williams have got to the stage now when they have to have a look and say, we're at the stage where, in terms of developing this car more, we need two driver input, and we need, like, if we want to sort of make inroads up the grid. And I think realistically, that's going to be one of the biggest decisions they're going to have to make this year. Is, do we take a punt on Logan Sargent now, who's their academy driver in F2, and who's been doing relatively well in F2 this year. But I would still say he's probably 1 year shy of making the main game. I'd sort of put him in the same category as Doohan.
I was thinking about him last week. He's kind of like had the same F2 career as Albon had. He's had good races, good finishes, but you never really think he's ready to go into Formula One.
Didn't Albon eventually become a champion though?
No, and you never really think that. Like, he raced with the big boys, got a few wins, was there or thereabouts, but you never really looked at him and said, you're destined for Formula One. And I think that's where Logan Sargent's at now. So it'll be interesting to see if he was to go to Formula One, how that translates, because it's probably a little bit raw still. But
I would give him another year in F2.
I did like I do like what Albon's doing, and I think he's put himself back into the limelight of Formula One, and it's really proved that he
belongs there.
Stay. Yep. And I think he signed for Williams again for another season.
Yep.
So is that going to be 3 in a row now?
What years? This is his first year.
Yes, second year. Yeah, I keep forgetting that. How well he's done this year. But yeah, not many more takeaways from the race from me, to be honest with you.
I think if you take away,
what did you make of Danny Rick? Like, I'm not going to argue about it, but what did you make of this race?
I feel like with everything that's gone on this weekend, I didn't expect much more than that. Having said that, I thought it was pretty poor. I wanted to see how Norris went this weekend. I was very interested in that. And I think the one thing the most interested was that the Alpine still finished ahead of him. I didn't expect that after qualifying, but it just keeps happening that Alpine is more suited to the race, and if it qualifies ahead of the McLaren because the McLaren doesn't suit the track, more power to it. But I just don't think they're worried about not being able to overtake it or catch up to it over a race distance. And I think that for me was probably the biggest surprise, because Norris is good at making his car wide, and sort of, if he's ahead of the rest, sort of finishing there. So for Alonso to sort of race up and eventually finish ahead of him, and even for Ocon to be right behind him, I think realistically there's enough races towards the end of the year that if Danny Rick doesn't help, McLaren's going to finish behind Alpine. And I think that's looking more like a probability rather than a possibility, with sort of what we're seeing. Like, even realistically, if you look at the just the races as they are, the Alpine boys just are looking more racy.
Does the fact that we've seen races 3 or 4 this year where Danny Rick started at
he wasn't even at the races this weekend, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, we've seen it a few times where he started at the back, and you would assume, based on the car he's driving, that he should be able to get at least to the back of the top 10 or 11th and 12th. And does this have results like this, regardless of how you feel about McLaren, regardless of how you feel about how McLaren went about bringing in Piastri? Does that somewhat vindicate their decision to not stick to the status quo? Because at this stage they're fighting for fourth in the championship with 1 against 2.
Oh, it definitely can, and I can definitely see the response for that. I mean, in on the flip side, you could say that this was sort of the verification that everyone needed, that the team hasn't probably been giving Daniel the confidence that he needs. And then you could say that realistically, like in all the interviews before and after the race, Daniel looked like a defeated person this week, and even before that race. And he puts on a brave face, but I've never seen him sort of talk so defeatistly before. And I don't know if you noticed that, but it definitely seemed like this weekend it really hit home that, yeah, this thing is done.
It's making me think that he's going to bow out at the end of the year.
I don't think he'll bail out in the year. I honestly, though, I see no reason in him except for his own pride helping McLaren anymore this year. Realistically, I think if McLaren, it's in McLaren's best interests to now get him out of the car and put someone in there for the end of the year.
Really?
Yeah.
Who?
I mean, they can't get Oscar.
With the
Maybe they
IndyCar
can
season,
get Oscar.
With one more race next week in IndyCar, and then obviously there being the third of the triple headers for Formula One, would it make sense for them to literally get Pato, get Colton? I don't know if Colton can actually drive. I don't know if he's got the super points, but I think Pato's got the super license point.
Do they want to give Pato the taste though? If he's not going to get a seat,
You might as well just give him try. I think for him, from an IndyCar's point of view, if you show that you've got something in you, then other people are at least your window shopping for other teams as well, right? So there's nothing to lose.
I think that for McLaren, there's nothing to lose. For Danny Rick, take an early break, and if you're going to sort something out, come back refreshed. But I can't see how the atmosphere or the mood in that team is going to be anything, is going to be harmonious at all. It's actually a very sort of funny juxtaposition if you look at the McLaren sort of handling of this Ricciardo contract, and then in MotoGP, sort of the Ducati handling of the Jack Miller contract, whereas they were pretty upfront with it straight away. Jack knew that he wasn't going to be retained. He wasn't one of the riders who they were really looking at. They gave him the time to sort out his future before they even announced a rider. But more so, you still see him working really harmonious in the team. The sort of the team dynamic doesn't look like it's changed at all, and especially him and Pecco's friendship, relationship, and respect is all still more than intact. And then you sort of hear what's coming out with what Norris has been saying recently. It just sounds like every party in that team is sort of walking on eggshells, isn't really feeling connected. And I think that's obviously going to hurt the results.
One more thing to consider, maybe, is there any chance, if let's stick with this theme that it's in McLaren's best interest to let Ricciardo go sooner rather than later, just for everybody's sake.
He would have to agree to that, though. That's the other thing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, 100%. But would it make sense for maybe Nick De Vries or Stoffel to get a chance? I mean, Stoffel's had a chance.
Honestly, I think you'd want to get a driver who hasn't done anything if Danny Rick's not going to get points to the end of the year, and it looks sort of like that, maybe give a driver who's going to push. I mean, having said that, realistically, that could sort of fail as well. But I just feel like it can't
get any worse.
So I feel like as a team, there needs to be an injection of energy that is going to sort of change the dynamic of that team at the moment. This is 7 races left. They're still beating Alpine in the championship, but on this trajectory, I don't think that can
It's not going
survive.
to last for much longer. Yeah,
No.
the issue. That's the issue. Well, enough about Formula One. Unless there was anything else that
I wanted to quickly touch on the Hamilton and Mercedes race. To be honest, yeah, like I feel like we touched on Ferrari and how that all sort of went. And I mean, Charles got a podium, so it wasn't a terrible weekend. But as you look at the fortunes of each team, there is such a difference in the way that Mercedes execute from sort of the package that they have. And we've been saying it all year, but they were realistically, those two cars had no right to be 1 and 2 at that stage of the race. And yeah, Verstappen pits, so he relinquishes the lead. But where is the Ferrari pressure making this a championship to sort of be there to pick that up? You know what I mean?
So they made a mistake on Carlos's second pit stop, but even the first pit stop,
Carlos had a race from hell, to be honest.
They put him out behind, I want to say Alonso.
His first pit stop was 12 seconds. They didn't have a tyre there. And then the second pit stop, they released him into the path of
that's right,
either Alonso or Ocon.
Yeah,
one of the Alpines.
Yeah, that's right. So like any pressure that they would have wanted to put on him was gone in. I think the interesting thing that we're seeing about Mercedes, and it's probably an inverse of what it was for the last couple of years, but it's like the recent history would show that McLaren, with the domination that they've had, have the ability to run historically had the ability to run a fairly safe strategy, the one that was risk averse. And then we saw Red Bull always having to just counter
and try strategy.
Yeah, try the alternate strategy to what Mercedes were doing. And we kind of said that they were risky. We said that, sometimes these strategies were going to pay off, and sometimes they did, with the occasional win for Red Bull. And I think we've just seen an inverse of that now, where Red Bull can kind of play it safe, try to get the buffer, make the pit stop, and we're seeing Mercedes take the race to them through the alternate strategy in the same way that Max and even Danny Rick before Max has been playing it really through the years of Mercedes dominance. So it's really interesting. Like, we respect the team more that has to push and has to try something different, but I don't think it's anything different to what we'd seen.
Well, you were saying last week that you think Hamilton's going to retire at the end of the year. And I think that what you just said is the exact reason why he won't retire at the end of the year. I feel like this year has invigorated him in a way of sort of dealing with a challenge. And I would not be surprised on if there was one driver to win a race this year who wasn't in a Ferrari or a Red Bull, that it would be him, even more than George, to be honest, because George is pulling in the results on consistency, but Lewis has looked like he's really grabbing that car by the scruff of the neck and making things possible that really don't look possible with that car at the moment.
The point that I stand by, I think, is that I don't know if Lewis is racing anymore for wins or for the off win. He's racing for championships. Like, that's the only thing that
it sounded yesterday like he was racing for the off win. Did you hear his outburst?
Yeah, I think that might be born a bit more out of frustration, but because
but a guy who wasn't racing for the off win wouldn't say that.
Well, any driver who's put in a position where they have the win with somewhat of a chance to win is going to outburst like that. But I don't know if there's still the vigor for a 22 race season, knowing that your car at best is going to be third best, and a realistic shot at the championship isn't that realistic. I don't know. I might be completely wrong, but that's how I feel. Like, I feel like he's got nothing left to prove. I feel like there's other interests in his life that he probably could pursue at this stage in his life. And if, they go into next season and it's the same old, I don't know if he's got it anymore. Like, I don't know. Do
you really believe that next season is going to be the same old after everything we've seen this year?
like they might be better. They probably will be better. They might give Ferrari a red hot crack at second, but
No, mate. No,
I
we're
can't
talking about
see.
next year, not this
Yeah,
year.
I know. I'm saying next year. I can't see in the form is in, the age is at, the jump that they've already got on the rest of the field. I don't see how Red Bull take a step back. Like I just feel like, Mercedes will make a step, Red Bull will make a similar step, and they'll be second maybe next year, but still, half a second off the pace every lap, 30 seconds by the end of the race with no set. Like I don't know how I feel about it. I just think he's been there long enough, done enough to just say, I've got nothing left to prove.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
how I feel
fair
about it.
enough, but I beg to differ.
Someone else who had nothing left to prove and wasn't going to keep racing just for the sake of racing was Andrea Dovizioso.
Yeah.
And we saw the end of Dovi this weekend in Misano. A little bit emotional, to be honest with you, because for as long as we've been following the sport closely, 2010, it might have been that we started really following it with a vested interest. Dovi's been there the whole time, and we've seen his journey from, starting at Honda with a third bike, kind of bursting onto the scene in the works team, and then his movement to Tech 3 Yamaha in their glory days, some might say, and then his movement to Ducati and being able to take it to Marc Marquez in a way that we haven't seen really any other rider do so in the last 10 years. And then obviously this year wasn't how he would have wanted to return to MotoGP. And I think he kind of just said, I enjoyed retirement. I had enough fun things going on, and I didn't really miss MotoGP as much as I thought I would, particularly with Yamaha being as ordinary as they were. So do you have any sentiments, any feelings, emotions that you wanted to share on Dovi?
I'm a Ducati boy, so Dovi was my boy for a long time. But even before his move to Ducati, I always loved watching him at, especially at Tech 3. I feel like those years when him and Cal Crutchlow were at Tech 3 together, that was sort of the start of when satellite bikes could really, well,
they were the first satellite bike to really challenge for racing.
Yeah, that's right. Like when they challenged for podiums, it was like, oh, watch this.
After the CRT years, yeah.
Yeah, so realistically, that really was probably where a lot of his respect came from. But then even if you just sort of dissect his career and his move to Ducati, there was a lot of good people put on those bikes, and he never really got bested until until they got rid of both him and Petrucci.
Even that year, he was kind of best. He wasn't that
still
bad,
best.
though.
He was still best of the Ducatis. But I know there was one year when I saw it today, he got 6 wins. And 6 wins in any championship is not something to sort of bat your eyelids at. But
well, it's a third of the wins, mate. That's the fact.
Yeah.
The fact is, it's a third of the wins in a whole. MotoGP is an 18-game season, so for him to get 6 is a phenomenal achievement.
One of the commentators said, like, all those years when Marquez was dominating, he was really the only person who kept those seasons interesting. So yeah, like it was a sad moment, and I really loved the special tribute helmet they made for him. I shared it up on the group today. But yeah, it really is. I saw a picture of him. It was him, Stoner, Rossi, Lorenzo, and someone else. And it was pretty much saying the old guard is now completely out of the sport, and we're in a totally new era of MotoGP.
But I mean, I don't know if you watched. We'll go into the race yesterday because
Great race.
far out. The race for the top
Race of
two.
probably the last 3 years. Best.
Yeah.
It was the best race since what was the race where Bagnaia and Marquez were together? Was it Sachin Ring last year, or I don't think it was Sachin Ring.
No, it wasn't.
But it was
Mugello?
or Coda. It might have been Coda.
Maybe Coda.
But whatever it was, it was the best race I've seen this year, and could rival one of the best races I've seen probably ever.
I reckon the last 5 years easily. You want to talk about Dovi being Dovi's last race? That was a throwback to some of the Dovi Marquez races we'd seen, 3-4 years ago, just with the intensity up the front, the inability to make mistakes, and
that for me was a throwback of the Stoner Rossi kind of dogfights that we used to get. What was that? 10 years ago now, probably even more. But honestly, yesterday's race was for me the validation of why Bagnaia and Bastianini are racing at the factory team for Ducati next year.
Bastianini might be my favorite rider on the grid.
Well, you can't claim him because he's racing for my team next year, so he's my boy. But I mean, realistically, I didn't even notice this at the time. The last lap of that race, so this is on 27 lap old tires, was as fast as Jack Miller's pole time. That blew my mind. And this is the track that last year Bagnaia had his fall that ended the championship run for him.
Yeah.
And for them to be racing,
it was a bit of an exercising his demons race, eh?
I don't know if it was that, but it was a statement. It was a massive statement for the rest of the year. And to keep that beast behind him for that whole race. There was even that last lap, I think Bagnaia set a lap as faster than the pole lap, and he screwed up turn 4 so badly, and he still set a blistering lap. The one thing I think we take for granted, or I'm worried about for next year for everyone else, is
his late lap pace.
This kid's tires don't go off.
I was going to say that
they don't go off.
He has got the ability. Better than many other riders on. That thing is, he's very light. He's a small guy. But
Bagnaia is light.
His ability to charge late in every race. If he's at the front and he manages to stay there, he pulls the gap at the end. If he's kind of at the back of the podium, 4th, 5th, end of the race, he's still got the tire life to keep pushing. So he's only going to get better at that whole higher management thing. So the way he's controlling that bike, obviously, is phenomenal. But to me right now, if Marc Marquez wasn't there, because he's my boy,
can I say something?
The beast is the guy.
Can I say something?
The beast is the guy.
I honestly believe next year
he could be world champion.
I think you're talking about Marc Marquez, and yeah, Marc Marquez is still the king. But if Marc Marquez isn't 100%, I don't know how he's going to fare against, I think these two especially, because, I mean, let's quickly talk about Bagnaia, first Ducati rider in history to win 4 races on the trot. You don't even really hear about many races winning 4 on the trot unless your name is Marc Marquez these days. I mean, the steel that he's racing with, and the not just the determination, but also the poise, leading from the front, controlling the race, controlling the pace. Yeah, I mean, Bastianini pushed him a lot yesterday, but still controlling these races, even on the days that he says, I don't feel too comfortable, I feel like every corner could have been a potential fall, to still, and the ball is in his court to make this a championship. Quartararo is there or thereabouts. But to make it a championship, he needs to score maximum points to the end of the season. There's still 30 points down and there's 6 races to go. So,
do you think the biggest I think the biggest worry for Quartararo right now isn't Bagnaia
It's the
because
rest
we
of the
know how many.
Ducatis.
It's not even the rest of Ducatis. It's Bastianini. It's Maverick Vinales finding some form because when you've got those two bikes in front of the Yamaha, it doesn't matter how good Quarter is, just doesn't have the beans to get it done.
But I
Um,
feel like we've got to a stage now, like the last two race weekends, every session has been topped by a Ducati.
yeah,
Practices, qualifyings, races has been won by Ducatis. Like I think even for Quartararo, it might have even been a bit fortuitous that Miller and
Zarco.
and Zarco was taken out, and Bezecchi was and Miller had their falls at the same corner, because I feel like the points could have ballooned out even more than what they are. And I feel like we're now seeing sort of the investment Ducati has made into the sport probably in its biggest form now, paying dividends for them. You know, they've given so many good bikes out to so many teams. They've invested in so many factory contracts for so many good riders now as well. And realistically, they're going for a championship, and the best bikes are all with their best young riders. And yes, say a couple of them fall. This race was a perfect example that a couple of them fell. There was an Aprilia in there as well, but there was still three Ducatis that sandwiched, or two other ones that sandwiched themselves between Bagnaia and Quartararo, the championship leader.
The interesting thing for
and this is probably the real sort of difference in sort of how Yamaha is treating MotoGP and Ducati. Yamaha's not investing anything in MotoGP really anymore compared to Ducati.
we have 6 races left, right?
Yeah.
The interesting thing for me right now, still a 30-point lead. It's come down a lot, but you would still say
nearly 100 points.
It's still pretty comfortably Quartararo's championship.
Do you say it's comfortably, or do you like another race like this and it's 20 or 15 points?
If we're at 30 points now, you'd still say, oh, quarters to lose. But, you know, Pecco has to keep riding the way he is. If we have another race like this and the championship goes from 30 points down to 20, then pressure's on. Because I think what we have seen from Quarter in the past, particularly his year on the Petronas SRT bike, is that when everything's going well, he will maximize his championship runs. But when the pressure does start, you know, and the flames kind of are pressed to the bottom of his feet, he does start to make a few mistakes. So if the championship comes down 20 points, less than a race win, he starts feeling the pressure. He's mired in 5th, and he tries to make something happen. This championship can swing very quickly. And the other thing that we need to say is, right now, even Aleix Espargaro, whose second half of the season has been pretty just in the shadows, he's only 3 points behind Pecco. And the pressure that Pecco's putting on Quartararo, if Quartararo was to make a mistake, blows up the championship for 3 riders, not 2. So, you know, kind of F1 started the year with all this promise, and MotoGP looked like it was going to just flame out. And what we've ended up seeing is Formula One has blown itself apart, and MotoGP, with 2 races to go,
6 races to go.
No, with 2 races to go. Like there's still
in the future.
With 2 races to go, yeah. This season's going to get yummy.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to see how it ends. Just to finish off on the MotoGP chat. Pecco, Quarta, Ducati, fantastic. Does MotoGP, and you kind of said, you kind of hypothesized, you know, what Marc Marquez comes back to the championship. And if you were listening to anything he said in the last fortnight, he pretty much said that when he comes back, if there's another setback, that's it. His grandfather already told him, after this injury, you've got nothing left to prove. You should retire. And Mark Marquez has come out and said, something else happens, that's it. I've got, his grandfather said, you've made all the money you need. No one's going to deny that you are the greatest, debatably one of the greatest MotoGP riders of all time. But I feel like this setback has given Mark something to prove. But with that being said, I think we're at a stage now where MotoGP doesn't need Marquez, but would be privileged to have his name in a championship fight like this as well. Because we're seeing Quadra, we're seeing Bagnaia. Mark Marquez has been riding at this level for the better part of a decade now. I think the MotoGP world fans deserve to see what he can bring to the championship. And the real pressure right now is on Honda to get some semblance of a bike together so that he can compete. And he doesn't need to be, the bike doesn't need to be all the way to where Ducati is, but if they can get it somewhere in the ballpark, I think we'll see the Marquez of old back. The question becomes...
I don't know if we'll ever see the Marquez of older back, but I don't think we need to see the Marquez of old. I think realistically, the one thing about Marquez is MotoGP never needed Marquez, because even in the years that Marquez was dominating, they always had Rossi to fill up the crowd. I feel like now, I was thinking about this a lot this weekend. The best thing since Rossi left, that he has left the sport, is he has left the sport with a team that he runs, but more than that, he's left the sport with a legacy of riders who, aren't him, but they very much come across with an attitude that he has, and they're pretty much training with him every day. And I thought about this today, but they're
proteges. They are his proteges.
For many years, the KTM sort of academy was probably the most successful academy for MotoGP riders. But I think now I would have to beg to differ and say no. The VR46 Academy, if you look at who's the two up and comers, has to say no. We've got
the two Bs.
The two B riders. We've got Bezzecchi, or the three Bs. Bezzecchi's come in on an older bike and he has looked just as good as a rookie as probably you could look without the other Ducati guys taking his thunder. Morbidelli came in and looked great until this sort of new iteration of Yamaha has really stunted his growth, and that he had that bad injury. And I would say Marini
he's coming. He's slow burning, mate. Yeah,
he's a slow grower. He doesn't fall off the bike, but to keep Quartararo behind him yesterday at a track that you wouldn't, like a year ago, you wouldn't think that the Ducati would really even suit with all the twists and turns. To keep Quartararo behind him, yeah, he's on the new bike.
I'm super obsessed. I'm super impressed with Marini, to be honest with you. I thought his name had given him the opportunity to go to MotoGP, and the fact that he's Rossi's brother, but he's a rider.
He never comes off either.
No.
He's finished.
He probably doesn't.
Crazy record of, because probably doesn't push to the.
He probably doesn't have the all out, like, balls to the wall, win it or bin it
pace.
He's not a beast. He doesn't have like a beast mode, but he's a good rider. He'll win a race or two.
If you think about it as well, these riders are training together at the ranch. They're all making themselves better. That whole mentality of iron sharpens iron.
Great analogy, Joe.
So, like what you're saying about Marquez, do I think the sport needs Marquez? I don't think so. I think what the sport wants is for Marquez to retire healthy, to enjoy the next part of his life. It's ridiculous how he's our age. He's accomplished so much. And realistically now, over the last couple of years, he's put his body through such a torment to get back into the sport after that horrendous injury, come back, win races.
Does that garner some level of respect as well? But that a man who's got he's we're talking about Hamilton. Hamilton's 10 years older than him. But for Marquez to have the success he's had, to have the injury that he had, battle back, win races, have another setback, win another race, have another setback. There's got to be some level of respect that you've got to have.
There's obviously
inside.
There's obviously a respect that you have to have. I mean, in hindsight, you probably wish he had some smaller injuries throughout the first part of his career to slow him down. But I feel like he got to a stage where he honestly felt he was invincible. And then you get to a stage where you're saving so many crashes, and they say that statistically this doesn't happen. And then, you have a few that, you end up real bad. I mean, I just hope he comes back safe. I would love to see him race again, but I don't think...
Can I slightly change the question then? How badly does MotoGP need Yamaha and Honda
to do well,
to get their act together?
I don't think MotoGP needs it at all. I think Yamaha and Honda need it. I think they're hurting their brand image badly.
Because we're going to get to the end of this year, and the top two manufacturers in the Constructors' Championship are both going to be Italian.
Yeah.
And
that's mental.
Unheard of.
It's mental. But it's not even that. We're going to get to the end of the year, and Honda is going to be so far off the pace. We're going to see everyone but Quartararo and Yamaha so far off the pace. And Yamaha are testing a new bike for next year. I think it was today or tomorrow.
Well, Mark Marquez is testing tomorrow.
And Mark Marquez is testing tomorrow.
Crazy.
But okay, they're testing a new bike. Guess what? Ducati and Aprilia know that they've got a bike for next year that they just have to iterate on. And there's going to be
already bulletproof.
There's going to be just as many Ducatis next year and an extra 2 Aprilias. So good luck. Good luck if you're Yamaha with 2 bikes trying to develop a new bike for next year.
Yeah. So my last question, I guess, is this. We're gonna have 2 amazing we have the news over the last week that Mir has officially joined Repsol Honda as well. That should be good for them. However, we've seen some great riders join Repsol Honda recently and kind of not do a whole lot. I mean, Paul Espargaro going from the KTM to the Honda, he was killing it on KTM. Never really did anything on the Honda. Lorenzo, pick your rider over the last 10 years.
I think Honda's made a massive mistake of this signing, to be honest. I feel like Honda need a rider who's going to grab... They need a
balls-to-the-wall rider. Yeah, they don't need a consistent rider.
Mir has never been known as someone who's going to grab the bike by the sort of scruff of its neck and sort of manhandle it to victory.
Do you reckon it would have been better for them to take Rins?
Well, they're going to have Rins on the satellite bike, which is the exact same bike anyway. I mean, the problem with Rins is that he crashes too much. But realistically,
they need someone like that. But
yeah, they do. But I don't think they want to put him on the factory bike. If I was Honda and I was looking to develop a bike, I would have gone after someone like Jorge Martin. Someone who is ridiculously fast, is going to push to the end. Yeah, he might come off a few times next year. You're developing a new bike. But
what about someone like Brad Binder?
No, I don't think Binder grabs the bike by the scruff of the neck enough. I feel like Oliveira would have been a better choice for that, because I feel like he actually,
He wins it or bins it. I like Oliveira.
yeah, he wins it a bit. Like they need I think they need a rider more like that, because there's
They
no
need a
way that
Marquez mold. That's the thing. Because I think also the other thing is if the Honda, like, you don't like it. Obviously, we've never ridden it, but from just garnering some level of insight, following the racing, Marquez has ridden that bike, number one, by not caring about its feel and in a weird way, like suppressing its feel, almost to just, I'm going to freaking, like, just,
he's going to do what I
I'm just
say.
going to wrangle it to make something out of it. And if you kind of need another rider that kind of runs before they can walk in the way that they race. Like, perfect example, Bastianini. If you had someone that literally just like, screw it, it's either going to go into the kitty litter, I'm going to have a broken collarbone and it's going to end my career, or I'm going to just, win this race. So they kind of need someone like that.
Herein lies the problem. Honda don't have the academy riders signed up like Ducati do. Like, if you think about it, Ducati come have all these riders signed up to factory contracts, and they have literally the pick of the litter of who they want on that bike. So much so they have probably two perfect candidates, and they can only choose one. And guess what? Martin's still on a factory contract next year. Surely, if you're Honda, and we know Repsol Honda pay the biggest contracts, surely you can make contact with one of these guys' agents and say, we're going to give you, stupid money because we need someone with, your skill set to help us.
Can I throw you one more name?
They need help.
Can I throw you one more name?
Throw me.
Of a rider who doesn't know any better, who's too naive to know any better.
Who might
just go in and kind of assimilate to a thousand, a MotoGP bike. Pedro Acosta.
No.
Might he be a better signing than?
He hasn't even mastered a Moto2 yet. Like, no.
Second half of the season's been pretty good.
He hasn't. He's been good, but he hasn't been setting the world on fire. I mean, there is still
He's only done half the season.
Yeah, I know, but there's still 5 or 6 riders in that group you'd say, okay, they're better than him.
But would you say that they're better because they've had more, like, for example, you'd say they're better because they've had more experience, but if you were to give him, like, in 12 months' time, he very well could be mopping up Moto2.
I don't think any rider who's had even 1 year of Moto2 experience ever comes in ready to MotoGP. Look how highly we were talking about Raul Fernandez at the end of last year and how fast he was. And he has looked like the shell of, like, he's looked worse than Darren Binder. And that's saying something. You know what I mean? And Darren Binder never did.
Crazy. Yeah. You know what's crazy? Even when you were talking about these massive riders right now, Bastianini against Bagnaia, their Moto2 careers, obviously Bastianini, they both won the Moto2 championship. But there were some moments in their careers, even Bastianini, he did 3 or 4 years of Moto3.
Quartararo was ordinary, a relatively ordinary Moto3 rider.
Do you swallow your saliva?
I swallowed something. I'm dying.
There's nothing else in there. All right, that's good chat about Moto. Let's finish off on IndyCar just briefly. I didn't get to watch the race this morning.
I watched it. It was relatively boring, to be honest, for the most part. It was processional.
Well, it's a short track. It's one of the more simple tracks on the IndyCar calendar. But what did interest me is the 20-point lead that Will Power takes into the last round of the championship, which is
not much.
No, it's not, but it's better than being 20 points behind. But for any Australian fans out there, the race win, third of the season, took out the pole as well, was Scotty McLaughlin. So he's really hit his stride in this second season. And if he had one more race finish, one less DNF, he's in with a shot for the championship, because he's only 40 points behind as we sit right now.
He's still in there for a shot for the championship.
Is
The
IndyCar still a double
crazier
points
things
round
are
at their
happening.
last race? Is it still a double
Oh,
points round to end the season in IndyCar?
I think so. But for me, even if you think about it, there's, there's not much that would have to happen for Scotty Mac to have a chance at the championship next week.
Mm,
I mean, crazy things have happened when you've had two, drivers at the front get caught up in contact, and that's all he really needs.
mm,
I feel like this weekend was after sort of last round when Newgarden sort of looked like he had hit his straps. This wasn't the weekend that he really needed.
mm.
I heard something crazy about Newgarden. It was he's got like 6 race wins this year and also 6 podiums. So he's only finishing on the podium when he's winning. I mean, Will Power probably did the best race he could, considering the pace that his teammate had as well. And Scott Dixon, out of nowhere, comes up 13 points from his starting grid spot,
Mm.
and finishes in third.
Mm.
And by the end of that race, was really give him a few more laps. Looked like he could have made something of it.
Yep.
So going into the last round, which is next weekend, it's all to play for. But I think the more interesting is that, there is still 5 people mathematically possible to win this championship with 1 race to go. Like, that's unheard of. 2 and there's 3 from one team, 2 from another. So you know that these 2 teams have been the cream of the crop this year. But yeah, like if you look at Scott McLaughlin, who I think we've all really wanted to see do well, and also wanted to see how he measures up against sort of some of the best in the world.
Yeah.
He's this year had 3 wins, 3 different tracks. He's run on a street circuit at St. Pete. He won on a small oval, I think, at Iowa. And then he's won on a, purpose-built racetrack. So 3 different types of wins. I think his last 5 races have been something like first, third, fourth, third, first, or something like that, like something ridiculous. So he's really finishing the season in what you'd call championship form, which only bodes well for him for the start of next year in terms of confidence. And like, it's sort of remind me of him in supercars. Like if he's starting on the front, good luck.
Yep. It's interesting. Like, it's almost not almost. He's kind of in a situation now where, even though he's not, like, we're still not saying, it's Scott McLaughlin's championship to win, but with the exception of Newgarden, if you were to look at the race wins, if you were to look at who's been able to kind of perform consistently over the course of the season, he had a little lull towards the end of the first half of the season, which
That's
kind
what we
of
call
took
the
him out
middle.
of. Yep, true. I call it the end of the first half, but neither. It's semantics. But it bodes well for next season. Moving, like, he's definitely finished his rookie season. This is supposed to be his sophomore slump. Moving into next season, he's a veteran of the sport now. And it's going to be exciting to see what the future holds for him, because that will be a great story for supercars, for Australasian motorsport. But with all of that being said, we've still got the race next weekend at Laguna Seca. And there's still everything to play for in this championship. A little bit of chaos, a little bit of carnage, a few safety cars. The IndyCar Championship is well and truly alive going into the last round of the championship.
What a track, though, to finish off at. Such an unforgiving track.
Unforgiving, yeah. Dusty, hot.
Guys getting beached.
High deg. Yeah, can't wait. I really can't wait for that final race of the season. But the good thing is we won't have to wait too long to
we'll know next week.
Yeah, to find out how it all ends. So, with all of that being said, Joe, I think we've shot it pretty well tonight.
I want to ask you a quick question, though.
Yeah.
What was your favorite race of the weekend, and why? So all very different.
I have been saying it for years. If you are lucky enough to watch a high quality MotoGP race, which is exactly what we got this weekend. I don't know if any other motorsport on earth can even compare to it. Fact. As much as I love four-wheel cars, as much as I love Formula One, any kind of racing, if you get a top-of-the-range MotoGP race, it's like listening to angels sing.
Is it? Is that what we're going to call this pod?
Because for the whole race, all you get is you're just awestruck because these bikes are bouncing, they're moving. It is, mate. It's like listening to the cherubim and the seraphim.
I feel like of all races to say to someone, go watch this and then tell me what you like and do a study on it. Like, tell me what you think.
Yeah.
This is the one to watch. And there's only 2 bikes really involved in the race, but they're so close for the whole thing.
You know, I was talking to my brother, cousin-in-law. No, my wife's cousin's husband, and he hadn't watched a MotoGP race since Rossi and Stoner, and he's got triplets, so now he's always watching sport, up feeding the kids, and he watched the race, and I kind of just thought, bloody hell, what a race to get reacquainted.
Like, what a first race to...
Yeah, it's almost like being able to read a book or watch a movie for the first time. Like, what a race to get reacquainted with a sport because, yeah, like I said, you get a good MotoGP race. It doesn't matter how passionate you are about another sport, motorsport, whatever it might be. Nothing can give you that spectacle. It's just, yeah.
It's all adrenaline, mate.
Mate, you've got me just wishing that I could be that. And
be
I
what?
can't.
Like, do that?
Yeah.
Dude, you can't.
I can't. I know.
Do you know how shit scared I get if I
Depressing.
start leaning just like that much and like a 10-degree angle?
Yeah.
Right.
These boys are special, man.
They're warriors.
That's
I think
the
we'll
way to
leave it
end
there, mate.
These boys are special. And I'll tell you what, MotoGP, it's in a good place. It's in a good bloody place. Farewell to Dovi. Farewell to the old guard. Even farewell to Marquez if that's what it has to be. But MotoGP will live on strong.
They have turned the ship around or built something from sort of like the ashes of what was once a glory time for the sport and brought it back in such a way that it has never been better, like in terms from a spectacle point of view.
Yeah. Leave it there.
I think so.
I've made myself dumbstruck. Anyway, all good. All right. So again, thank you so much for listening, guys. Please keep sharing.
We'll be back next week.
Following, engaging in the socials. We'll be back next week with the 3rd round of F1's triple header, which is taking us.
Is there a triple header? Is there another race next week?
Yeah, there's 3 in a row.
So we got supercars next week, INDYCAR, and
supercars
F1
in the
Auckland,
over the ditch.
Pukekohe.
We've got Formula One. I can't remember where it's at, but it's another. It might be
Quickly look. It's got to be in Europe.
I've lost it, and we've got the
Is it
IndyCar
Italy?
finale. No, I don't think so. It's close to Belgium, Holland. It's close to that region. Regardless, so we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for your time,
dude. I just said it's Italy.
It is in Italy.
Yeah, it's in Monza.
They've raced in Monza, haven't they? All right, we're at Monza then. The Cathedral of Speed, Catedral de Pasto. All right, we'll leave it there. Joey, thanks for your time, mate. Good chat. It was good not to argue with you this week and have a civil discourse. And
Harry back next week.
Yep. Hope you enjoyed Perisher. Hope he didn't fall on his ass too many times in the ice. But all right, boys, have a great night.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, mate.